Okay, my topic is basically about hawks, and it's mostly about hawks in flight. It's not all about in flight. It's also about raptors sitting there. Originally, I did this about 5 years or more back for the Huron Fringe Birding Festival, and tonight you're going to get a improved version, I hope, of the same of a similar presentation. Somehow, I guess in starting this, well, I guess I'm going to back up for a minute. Here's how basically I want to start to talk about how the human brain works. And I picked this up in a book called Subliminal. And he says that the only animals on the planet that can store facts are human beings. And in addition to being able to store facts, human beings are also, facts are just, are diverse. For example, your bills come in your house, you put them in a drawer. If you keep them mixed up with all the general mail and it's the end of the month and you have to find them, it gets to be a bit of a problem putting them together. So what we tend to do so that we can zero on the information and the facts that we have stored in our brain is we tend to put them in categories. And categories are very important, particularly when you're trying to identify hawks. And first thing, I have a few goals to talk about. To do this well, and I would say every book ever written on birds and rather on identifying hawks always comes down to these three basic pictures or a variation of them. And what you have to do, first of all, we're talking about the human brain and facts and categorizing them. The first thing you have to do is try to categorize them in three different categories. And if you do that, you'll get most of the birds that appear in our area. The buteos, for example, they come with 4 different species, and we're familiar with it. But what I'd like you to do is just take a look at the body of it. It's got long wings. The wings start at the neck and go right down to the tail, and it has a short tail. And if you see a series of birds like this, they're in the buteo category. Remember, we're talking about putting facts in files. And we come down to 4 birds that it's possible to see. We've got the red tail, the rough leg, the red shoulder, and broadwing. The next category is the accipiter category. And if you look at its shape, and you have to learn these shapes if you really want to get good at this, if you look at it, it's different. First of all, the wings do not go to the tail. They start at the neck, but end up short of the tail. And if you look at the wings, they're shorter and rounded at the edge. And this, of course, includes sharp-shinned hawk, Cooper's hawk, northern goshawk. These birds we'll get to a little bit later. And next in this is we have the falcons. And the falcons, what's unique about them is they have a pointed wing. So if you see a raptor flying, if you can pick up these 3 different shapes, the pointed wing of the falcons, medium-sized tail. If you look at these, if you look at those and you can figure out whether it's a buteo, an accipiter, or a falcon, now you're into the ball game of what experienced birders do is you sort through your possibilities and usually come up with it. And usually there's things that help you with your possibilities. For example, we're getting a duplication here. Anyways, for example, in the buteos, there's 4 birds. There's the red-tailed hawk, who's around all year. We got the rough-legged hawk, and he's a wintertime only bird. And so if it's wintertime and you see a buteo flying around, you've got 2 choices. These other 2 hawks below are red-shouldered and broad-winged, and they're summer birds. So what I'm trying to say is that you're trying to take in a whole bunch of factors: the time of year, the shape, and the genus. And it's important to know the genus because it puts the birds in the category, and each category has particular kind of features that you probably store in your file of information of facts. Now, there are exceptions, of course. We have eagles, we have ospreys, and northern harriers, and that's not too many exceptions. However, we'll deal with those later on at the end. So basically speaking, if you want to be able to do this, you need to identify the bird by shape, and that gives you some detective work to solve what the patterns are and what the possibilities are. And there's 3 basic shapes that you should know, and they're in front of you. Here's just a little quick review. And I hope you know what genus this is. Just think about it. And it's basically, it's that bird that has the wings starting at the neck, going to the tail, and it's got a short tail, got long wings, and this was the buteo. So this is just a little quick quiz for you to just work your brain. I'm a school teacher, so I'm a little bit big in repetition, so you'll have to forgive me on that. And the genus of this bird, we talked about it earlier, and that's an accipiter. And it's got the features of having a long tail, the longest tail of all of them. It's got shorter wings, and the tail goes from the or rather the wings go from the neck down to the top, down just above the tail, unlike the buteo, which goes right to the tail. And this genus is the falcons. They're probably the easiest of the three to pick up, because the big key there is it's the only one of the three that have pointed wings, and it's got a medium-sized tail. So basically, we've just reviewed those three genuses, and I'm just going to give you a quick look at them again. So we got the buteos, which are the largest of all of these birds, and take a look at that shape. And we're dealing with 4 species here listed on the right. And the next one down are the accipiters, and these are your sharpshins, coopers, and northern goshawk. And below that, we have the falcon, and we have the 3 falcons in our area: American kestrel, merlin, and the peregrine falcon. Now we're going to kind of work on this genus. So you know what this bird is, I hope, at this point. I hope you're calling out buteo. And here's a bird that's a buteo, and this is our picture bird that was on our first page, your first slide. And this is, as you can see, is from its red tail, which is probably the most easiest thing we identify it with, is a red-tailed hawk. Now, the red-tailed hawk, I'm going to get into features here. So you may want to know some of these things. Probably the first thing is the name is a clue. And probably the first thing we look for is the red tail. But the difficulty of the red tail is sometimes it's not evident. And so there are other general features that we might pick up. For example, red-tailed hawks tend to be all white underneath, and it's not rare in that, but it's one of the few buteos that are like this. Now, the broadwing hawk has a white underside as well, but it's much smaller and not as majestic, and the wing structure is a bit different. And the other thing people point out, I've heard people point out on birding hikes, oh, it's got a belly band, it's a red-tailed hawk. But there's one thing that cements it, that makes it different from all the other buteos. And this is this bar right here that starts at the neck and goes out to the wrists or the carpals. And that's called a patagium, P-A-T-A-G-I-U-M. It's the patagium bar, and no other buteo has that. And so that basically would be the red-tailed hawk, and that would be its field marks as well. But once again, it comes down to shape. Okay, here's another one. This is a different view of a buteo. This is like a side view, but remember what we talked about? It had long wings. It started at the neck and went right down to the tail. Okay, so, and it's got long wings right down the tail. So we're looking at the buteo. It's also got a short tail as well. And this one in this case is a rough-legged hawk. Now, a rough-legged hawk, what's good about this bird is well, not what's good about, but what makes this easier to identify this bird is it's only around in the wintertime. And there are not too many raptors around in the wintertime. We have some red-tailed hawks, and we have some rough-legged hawks, and those are the only 2 buteos that are around. So your dilemma for solving what bird is this, or what species of bird is this? Well, you know it's a buteo from its shape. However, and then you're down to 2 birds. So what makes it different from a red-tailed hawk? Well, obviously it looks different, but there's something right here that is one dominant field mark that sticks out a lot. And people in my birding club someone named these meatballs, and we call them meatballs ever since. Technically, they're known as a carpal patch, but to us, they're the meatballs. So a buteo is a rough-legged hawk that has meatballs on its wings, I remember we talked about stomach or belly band. Well, this bird has a belly patch, and it's much more extensive than a thin belly band of the red-tailed hawk. And the other thing that it has that the red-tailed hawk doesn't have, or doesn't seem to have, is has a white tail. And the more white in it, the younger the bird is. So this would be a young, probably a first-year bird. And then as it matured, the white would get some other additional wider broaded bands in it. So this is a rough-legged hawk. I'm just going to have to check my notes here, just see whether I talk. Okay. It's the same size as a red-tailed hawk. And actually, the best ID mark, I think, is are the meatballs, if you can see them. And after that, the tail and the patch on the stomach are others. It's called a rough-legged hawk because the legs go right down to, the legs have feathers that go right down to the feet. And this it uses for warmth. This is a tundra bird. And so it doesn't mind the cold, so it can handle the cold. It only comes south in our wintertime because it's a visual hunter. And when you're living in the tundra and you have 24 hours of dark, you can get pretty hungry looking for food. So it moves down here where it can pick up the food. It can perch, and it does perch, and it does hover. Now, red-tailed hawks can hover over their prey as well before they pounce, but they seldom do. But this bird is, that's one of its features. So if you see a large buteo like this in the wintertime hovering, it's most likely a rough-legged hawk, and then you have to prove that it isn't from that point on. Another feature of this bird that helps with its identity is it has small feet, or smaller feet. The red-tailed hawk has very large feet with substantial claws on it. This hawk has smaller feet with also substantial claws on it, just as effect in stopping the prey. However, what the small feet does for us as birders is it gives it an additional identification feature. And the identification feature is this. If you look at a tall tree in a distance, it's the wintertime, and you see a large bird sitting in a tree, you know it's a buteo. You know it's a buteo because nobody else is around really. And your choices are red-tailed hawk and rough-legged hawk. However, because this bird's got small feet, it's able to sit in the tree right at the top where the branches are small. So if you see a bird sitting at the top of the tree in the wintertime, that's a raptor, it's most likely a rough-legged hawk. And you put your scope on it, and usually you'll find that you're right almost all of the time. When you are wrong, and it turns out to be a red-tailed hawk, and in your scope, take a look at it again, and you'll see that the red-tailed hawk is sitting on a stump, or it's sitting on the top of a tree where the smaller branches have broken off, and there's a substantial limb for it to sit on. So the small feet give you an identity clue in terms of where it sits in the wintertime. Now, it also comes in another form. It's called a dark morph of the rough-legged hawk. And this bird is easy to identify. You can look at the meatballs. They're just incorporated right into part of the rest of the black here. So there's still the sort of the end of it, but it's a distinctly different bird. It's a winter bird. And if you see a bird that's black like this and dark like this, you can jump right on it and call it a rough-legged hawk. So that one is fairly easy to identify. What's different about the other thing about this? The other thing about this bird is that it's is that out west, I guess there's probably more of them out west. There's less of them out west. I think about 10% of the rough-legged hawks out west are Bill, you got to mute yourself. Bill Klein, mute yourself, please. The rough-legged hawks out west, there's only about 10% of them. Where we live, about 30% of the rough-legged hawks come in this dark morph. And if you go farther east, that works its well up to 40%. Okay, here we go. We have a genus here, and we're going to try to ID the bird. And this time, of course, it's a buteo. I hope we got that right. Remember, see the wings? Go from the head to the tail. You got to learn that shape. The tail is short, and however, the bird is different. And if you look at this bird, it doesn't have the red tail. It's not winter time, it's summertime. And it's got this redness or rustiness to it. And this is a red-shouldered hawk. The red-shouldered hawk is a forest bird. It's a forest bird. So, for example, if you go to McGregor Park, you're likely to find one. If you go to an open field, it tends not to be there. It won't be there. So you're looking at a different kind of bird. It's also smaller than the bird you're used to, the red-tailed hawk. It's maybe 5 or 6 inches smaller. Now, identifying it, of course, is quite easy if you get this the red shoulders and the red on the breast. And in addition to that, if you look at the tail, it's got a black and white tail with black stripes on it. The other difference between it and a red-tailed hawk is it soars. When it soars, it's got flat wings going straight out from the body. The red-tailed hawk, for example, has a slight dihedral or a slight V coming off from the body. And the rough-legged hawk, for example, has a steeper dihedral V. So if you see a distant bird flying towards you, and you know it's a buteo, and you're not quite sure of what the idea is, how flat the wings will tell you. So flat wings are red-shouldered hawks, and if you get anything larger than that, then you're into red tail, and you're into the other bird as well, rough-legged hawk. Okay, the other thing this bird has that's kind of unique that other birds has, it has white crescents on the outer edge of the wing right here. See the white crescents? And there's white crescents over here at this end of the wing as well. And they're showing through over here. Now, this is one of the features of a red-shouldered hawk. And if you don't see this feature on a red-shouldered hawk, it's because the light direction is wrong and it's not working for you. This is a perch-sitting bird. It sits in the forest, and it goes after anything on the ground, including birds, exactly if it has, but it goes anything on the ground that starts with the size of a squirrel and down. So that's basically what it feeds on. Here's a buteo, but it's different. It's a buteo because you take a look at those things we talked about before: short tail, wings start over here, and wings start at the neck, and then just at the tail. But the end tips look like this, and some people describe this as sort of looking like a flame. And this bird is a broad-winged hawk. The broad-winged hawk is also a forest bird, and it's the smallest of all of the buteos. This is our first buteo we're talking about here, and it's the smallest of the buteo, and it varies in length from about 13 to 17 inches. It's found in forests, and it's a perch hunter, and it eats anything that's small: mammals, insects, frogs, snakes, and birds, and it pounces on it. Identifying it, you probably won't see it flying too often, except when it's migrating, perhaps. But it's got this white underbelly, and it's got this tail like this. But basically speaking, if you see a small buteo bird sitting in a forest, you're pretty safe to go with the fact that you're calling it a broad-winged hawk. This bird also soars with flat wings, unlike the two larger brothers it has, or cousins, whatever you want to call them. It has flat wings. It soars on flat wings, just like the red-shouldered hawk. Something I'd recommend for you to do is go down to a hawk watch in our area. I can't help the people out west with this, and they may not even have them out west. I don't know. About somewhere around about September the 15th, all these birds somehow magically emerge from their forest habitat and seem to know exactly where to congregate. And then they go down in mass and migrate in mass. And if you get down to a hawk watch somewhere around September the 15th, this is a magnificent thing to see. You'll see thousands of these birds passing through. And as they pass through, they have this a beautiful flight to watch where they fly up, they spiral up and spiral up, and they go higher and higher as they spiral up. And then when they get to the top, they move on, covering more ground by gliding and gliding and gliding and going farther, covering more ground and getting close to the ground. When they get close to the ground, they repeat this. And if you catch it at the right time, and you're lucky enough to catch it at the right time, you'll see these birds doing this all day, almost in line, like almost marching in unison sometimes. They're soaring dependent, so they'd be hunting on the way down. Whoops, I guess I could have used that slide there. Here's a genus that we're talking about. It's not the typical one we had, but take a look at it. It's wide-winged, it starts at the neck, but doesn't end at the tail. Remember that term, accipiter? So, and it's got a long tail, so it's an accipiter. And in this case, we have a sharp-shinned hawk. The sharp-shinned hawk and the Cooper's hawk are perhaps the hardest two birds to separate or identify in this group here. They've got short, rounded wings. And if you look at the wings, they look, I don't know if you saw it's old movies when they, silent movies in the old days, they had a character there called Bela Lugosi, who was a vampire. And Bela Lugosi would do the same trick that the sharp-shinned hawk does. He'd raise this cape, he'd wear this cape, raise it over his shoulders, and then he would surround it around his victim, I guess, and do whatever vampires do under there. But this bird is almost like the vampire in a way, because it raises its wings and it gets and almost covers its head. So if you look at the difference between the head and the wings, you can see that the wings forward usually will tell you it's a accipiter. The other difference, of course, it has a very sharp edge to its tail, and sharp for sharp-shinned is a good memory hook. Okay, and this next slide compares compares it to a Cooper's hawk. And the Cooper's hawk is a larger bird than the sharp-shinned hawk, maybe about 6 inches larger. So sometimes you can identify a flying accipiter by its size, but that gets a little dicey, because sharp-shinned hawk females are larger, and male Cooper's hawks are smaller than the females. For some reason, in many of the raptors, the females are larger than the males. But anyways, but there are ways of distinguishing them, and there's a classic way of distinguishing them. And the first one is the head position. The head position on a Cooper's hawk is back. The wings are back farther, and it looks like it has a larger head, but that's because the wings are held back or seem to be being to the rear. If you look at the wings of the sharp-shinned hawk, it's got that Bela Lugosi look where the wings are coming up close to the head there. And so that's one way of telling it. This is the classic way that people will tell you how to identify it. And the other one is to look at the tails. They both have long tails, of course. And the sharp-shinned hawk has the sharp edges to its squared off tail. And the Cooper's hawk has down its tail, it has a longer central vein in its tail, which makes it look like it's rounded. C for Cooper's hawk, sharp edge for sharp-shinned hawk. Okay, now those are the classic ways of distinguishing the two. But basically, this is probably your two hardest identifications, and partially is because these birds don't cooperate. And I've got pictures here that just show you exactly what I want you to see. But birds and how they fly and the angles you get them at don't exactly cooperate in that manner. Here's the next thing is sitting a sharp-shinned hawk and a Cooper's hawk. First of all, I got this photo yesterday and I put it in yesterday. It's from John and Kate Thompson, who sent it to me yesterday, and I've put it in, and I should have spent some time making it larger, because the bird on the right is the Cooper's hawk, and it is larger than the sharp-shinned hawk. Now, before I get into details, I might not even get into the details of what the field marks are. I would just look at the shape, and if it looks slender, one author describes it as a bowling pin. If it looks thin, it's a Cooper's hawk. So you could tell by its shape. Thin is a Cooper's hawk. If it looks like a bowling ball or a little robust or a little chubbier, it's a sharp-shinned hawk. Okay, there are other differences as well that you can get into it. For example, the Cooper's hawk has a cap. And if this cap goes right to the back of the head, then for sure it's a Cooper's hawk. Whereas this one here, on this one, you can't see the back of it, but it doesn't end, and there's a little white space there at the neck or the nape at the back here. And the other difference between the two is if you look at the very, very thin legs of a sharp-shinned hawk, some people describe them as they look like two pencils. Well, the Cooper's hawks, they're a little bigger than a pencil, but they're not exactly bigger. But anyways, they're larger, they're a little larger to see. So those are some of the quick things. But to my eye, the first thing I'd look for is the shape. It's like a bowling pin, it's a Cooper's hawk. If it looks like the bowling ball, it's a sharp-shinned hawk. And that's one of those instant identifications you can make without getting into the details. And then you can justify whether you're right or wrong after that by going over some of the details like we talked about, like does it have a cap and things like this. This is the last accipiter we're doing. And this accipiter is a northern goshawk. Now, this bird is hard to find. It's an Arctic bird. And we get them here in our winter time. And there's sightings of them, but I haven't seen one for years myself. It has that accipiter look in that the wings don't go down to the tail. Initially, when you see one, or when I see one, your first reaction is it's a red-tailed hawk, but it's not a red-tailed hawk because of the wings. It's got the accipiter look, with the shorter width of the wing here. And the giveaway that it is a northern goshawk is that it's got this white supercilium or white eye stripe over the eye over here. And that would make him a northern goshawk. Okay, here's genus and bird ID. So let's look at the genus first, pointed wings. Remember we talked about pointed wings? So this would make it a falcon. And the bird that pops up is American kestrel. So an American kestrel is one of the three falcons we have. It's along with the merlin and along with the peregrine falcon. How do we know it's an American kestrel? Well, this one here is, it's got this rufous back, which it's a very colorful kestrel. It's got a rufous back, and that makes it a male. The females would be have this blue-gray throughout, and just as it has this blue-gray. The other thing on American kestrel, it has a double mustache or down stripe from the eye, and then at the back of the eye over here. And that could make an American kestrel. What's different about this bird from the other two falcons, the merlin and the peregrine falcon, is this is an open field bird. The other two birds can be found over an open field as well. However, they're found in town or in cities. The American kestrel does not go into towns or cities. It's a country bird. It likes the open fields. Merlins, you could have them living on your street right there in Stratford. I know we had one down the street here last year, which entertained us for a while, I guess. Okay, so that's the American kestrel. And I guess I should have used this slide to talk about the mustache, the two mustaches on it. And this is obviously our male again. And there he is sitting on a wire. One author says that you can tell the difference between the three falcons. You can tell it's an American kestrel because only the American kestrel can sit on a wire. I know when I originally did this, Bob Taylor, an excellent birder in our area, was in our birding club. Next day after he sat through my wire, he sent me a picture of a merlin, which is a falcon, of course, and it too was sitting on a wire. So this gets down to the thing of behavior. The author who said that only the kestrel can sit on a wire is probably right most of the time, but behavior is behavior, and we all have behavioral changes. I know we might love our grandchild and we just love the good things he does, but every once in a while, he throws a temper tantrum trying to intimidate everybody so he can get his own way. And of course, we don't like that. Now, that behavior is not common. It shows up out of the blue. But what I'm telling you, that behavior is a good indicator of what the bird is, but it's not foolproof because we can all change our behavior from time to time. This is a falcon, our second falcon, and this is a merlin. It's got all the other features that the falcons have: the pointed wings, the medium-sized tail, and in this case, this bird is almost the same size of an American kestrel. It might be an inch bigger, but it's 1/3 heavier because it's got a bigger body and it's more robust. So it may be roughly the same, but it's 1/3 larger. It's different from the American kestrel in its flight pattern. The flight pattern of a merlin is fast and direct. When it chases prey, it'll change it, and of course it'll do the prey is dodging it, and it'll go after the dodges as well and do the dodge trick trying to catch it. But basically, when you see this bird moving, it's usually direct and it's fast, and there's no gliding in it. It's generally fast, and it's going about treetop level. So that's its flight pattern. The flight pattern of the kestrel is different. It sits on the wire. It goes out there lazily, and it hovers over its prey and then pounces on it, but it also flies more similar, not to totally like a butterfly, but it has some butterfly moves. This bird has no butterfly in him. He's fast, he's direct, and birds respect him and stay out of his way. He's got a voice that sort of says key 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 key, and sometimes if he lives on your street, sometimes you wish you just stopped talking. This one is our last of our falcons. This is a peregrine falcon, and he's the largest of the falcons, and he's roughly about 17 inches, so he's probably a good 6 inches longer than a merlin. His features, his immediate feature, his most identifiable feature, and you can usually see this when it's flying, he sort of has a football helmet on his head with a singular fat mustache sticking down this way over here. So that's your peregrine falcon. The other thing about a peregrine falcon is it's an extremely fast bird. It hunts by climbing far above the birds, folding its wings, and going into a dive. And some of its dives have been recorded as going as fast as 242 miles an hour or 389 kilometers per hour. And that's the record of a timed peregrine falcon. And basically, that's his hunting technique. He gets up high in the sky, sees usually a dove, and what he does is folds his wings. He comes at it and just at this fast, incredible fast rate, hits it. When it hits the bird, feathers fly, and he flies off with a dove, and that's his meal for the day. His hunting technique is fairly effective. It probably gets his prey about 50% of the time, so it's not a surefire kind of thing. So he has to work for his meat. And the other thing that's different from him, from the other two falcons, is that he eats exclusively birds. The other two falcons, the peregrine, and not the peregrine, the merlin, and the American kestrel, they'll eat insects, they'll eat small mammals, small mice, things like this, voles, things like that. So they'll pick up and eat this. This guy is an exclusive bird eater. Now I want to show you this video I got off YouTube. Ooh, here we go. And this is a red-tailed hawk over here. And what's going to happen is this red-tailed hawk is getting too close to the nest, and peregrines nest in cliffs or high places. In Burlington, where my birding club usually went in the past, we go down there to the Burlington Canal and we look at it, pick up our annual peregrine falcon. He's sitting there at the lift bridge at the canal, and he lives up there all year round. So he's there in December or whenever you want to see him. But anyways, so what I'm saying is the peregrine lives in a high area like a cliff, or in the case of the one in Burlington, on top of the lift bridge. Anyway, so here's a red-tailed hawk flying into a peregrine falcon's nesting area. Take a look at the red-tailed hawk there. See that? You can see it's a beauty. You'll see how long the wings are. See where it starts, and see the shorter version of the tail. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to click it, and here we go.
And the threat it poses to the falcon nest must be answered.
Pointed wings, pointed wings.
The peregrine, though small, is ready to fight. Its maneuverability, and most of all, its speed, can overwhelm virtually any intruder.
There's the red-tailed hawk.
The red-tail never even sees the danger from above. Another win for nature's top gun.
The person who recorded that on YouTube said that the red-tailed hawk died on impact with the ground. Now, that peregrine falcon has claws, but he didn't use his claws on that red-tailed hawk. The hawk is too big for him to capture and catch. You'd take them both down that way. So basically what they do is what you do if you wanted to punch something, you would make a fist. So he tucks his claws and makes a fist, and he comes down there as fast as he can and at very high speeds and hits the red-tailed hawk and stuns him to the point where he can't recover. This bird here doesn't quite fit. He looks sort of like a buteo in that the wings start at the neck and go down to the tail, but they're like long planks, long pieces of lumber that stick way out. And this is an eagle, and in this case, a third-year eagle. Okay, and here he is right here. Now, it takes about 4.5 years for an eagle to get the white head and the white tail. So this guy's a young guy, and I'll get into what makes them, or how you can sort of age them. But what makes it an eagle in this case is take a look at the head, and if you see the head, it's got a stripe on it. Okay, so an immature eagle doesn't have the white head, but it has a stripe over the eye over here, and it has a lot of white in it like this. All right. And here's a golden eagle. It looks the same. Got those long planks, got the short tail, and there he is there. And this bird gets its name golden from its brownish color. And if you look at its tail, it's got a white mark in it, and the head has got this kind of a honey brown look to it. And here's a comparison of the two and separating them by age. If you take a look at the bald eagle starting left to right, the bald eagle, earliest bald eagle stage has a little white on it. You can see white in the wing, white down here down the side. And then as you see that it gets into the second year, more white starts to appear. And as you get into the third year, even more white starts to appear. So in aging these, and even looking at the tails, it gets whiter and whiter. Even in aging these, the more white you see in a bald eagle's body, the older it is. So this would be a 3-year bald eagle. And in its 4th year, all that white that you see on that 3rd-year bird would turn a dark color, and the head would turn white and the tail would turn white. Now with the golden eagle, something else happens as well here. If you look at it, we have, you look at the wings, and if you look just sort of below the carpals over here at the wrist, you can see it's got a fairly long white patch over here, and that would be a 1st-year bald eagle. Golden eagle. And if you look at the white on the tail, that's also indicative of an immature bird as well. And then if you get into a 2nd year, you can see that the white crescents or the white marks have diminished, and so on. And then when you get to the more mature stage, it's got this brownish color. It's got this brownish hue all over, and the head, regardless of the age, is always sort of this honey brown look to it. It's got that brownish look to it. And of course, the bald eagle has the stripe in the head. Okay. Whoops. Yeah, I guess that kind of separates it. The next one is the osprey. Osprey is a very distinctive looking bird. Take a look at the wrist over here, or the carpals, and you can see it's got a carpal patch. We call this a meatball on a rough-legged hawk. So it's got meatballs as well. And it's got this, it's got long wings. It's a fairly long-winged bird with a short tail. And it's got this one distinctive feature in that it's got this white eye stripe over here, a black eye stripe rather, over a whitish head. And the other thing that's significant about this bird, if you're thinking about habitat, and I should have mentioned this with the eagles as well, I'll go back to it in a second, but this bird lives off fish, and it needs a water habitat. So somewhere you need some access to water, usually flat water. You want flat water where it can fish, or slow moving wide river water or something like this. But anyways, it needs that as well. Just going back to our bald eagle and gold eagle, the habitat of a bald eagle, he's a fish eater. And if he can't catch fish, he'll also take ducks. And I think they're very good at taking ducks, because sometimes the fish are just hard to see and hard to catch. And so he'll eat that. And he's found near water. This bird is found in open areas. And he may nest in cliffs and in very high places, or very high, the tip of trees and things like this. But he likes open. He likes to look for mammals on the ground in open areas. So that's another thing. So the habitat will tell you whether it's a bald eagle or a golden eagle, even if you can't see these features on them. And keep that in mind. Of course, the size tells you it's an eagle as well. So, and those are things that go beyond field marks. You just know it's an eagle because of the size, because of its location, and you can distinguish between bald and gold. Okay, the next one is a northern harrier. The northern harrier is a raptor as well. And if you look at it, it's distinctly different than all the other raptors. It's got an owl face on it. And that would indicate that when it hunts, it's also listening. So it's a visual hunter, and it's also an auditory hunter, listening for sounds which will draw his eyes to where his prey is. The other thing about this northern harrier, he's got long wings, has very long wings, as you can see. And one of the ID tips, if you're looking for field marks, it's got these black wing tips. The best field marks is this white patch on its rump over here. However, when you're out driving in your car and you see a bird, what's distinctive about identifying this bird before you even get into field marks is how it behaves. It flies low to the ground. It sort of lazily, and it flaps its wings. It's got a dihedral V like that. It's light-bodied, which means it gets tippy in the wind and stuff like that. And it just goes left, goes right, goes a little higher, goes a little lower. And then we'll see something, hover a little bit, and then pounce. So anyways, that's its hunting technique. So even, just by seeing this low raptor doing this sort of flight pattern that it has, this slow, lazy flight, it's a northern harrier before you even get into identification marks. And although the field guides point out the black tips, if you need a field mark, that's the best field mark is this. It's not so evident on this picture, and it's not shouting at you on this picture, but just picture this bird tipping left, tipping right, flying, banking left, blanking right, going lazily over the ground in a slow, lazy flight. And that white rump gets quite visible, but just the behavior will tell you that. And of course, it's got that owl face. So those are probably your three key things. And this is very good if you see a raptor in the field. Sometimes sitting raptors get harder to identify than flying raptors. I was at Peely once, and there was a bird sitting in the field, and it had that owl face. So that was the tip-off. Couldn't see anything much about the bird, but there it was. It was just saying, I'm a northern harrier. And the other thing about northern harriers, they come in two colors. The females are brown because of nesting. You see the white rump because they're nesting, and the males tend to be gray. And now I spoke a little faster than I wanted to. I don't know why. Maybe I was a bit nervous or something. I don't know, but I almost went an hour. But anyways, that is the end of the raptor presentation. And this is a photograph taken from our Huron Fringe Birding Festival, which is going virtual light this year. We have 8 different speakers speaking, and the virtual thing is free. And if you want to Google McGregor Point Provincial Park or the Huron Fringe Birding Festival, it'll give you a schedule when these Zoom speakers are are speaking, and it's free to join, and you'll get some of the top birders. We try to pick some excellent people. For example, we have Mark Peck coming back. We had Justin Peter, but he couldn't make it, so he sent us an excellent substitute. We have some excellent birders to talk about various aspects of birding. And so if you're looking for something, that's probably a place you should probably go to. Anyway, so that's the end of my presentation. So